The Outer Banks, beautiful and remote. A place shaped by wind, water, and time. A geological infant. The Outer Banks as we know them today are only 4,000 to 5,000 years old. Since their formation, these barrier islands have been migrating westward as storms and waves wash sand across the island and deposit it landward. Evidence of that movement is all around us. Protected from the harsh Atlantic winds, maritime forests take root. Over time, those same forests are overtaken by the sea, leaving behind ghost forests as reminders of a constantly changing coastline. Inlets open and close, dunes shift, shorelines move. This landscape has never been still. The first indigenous peoples were living in eastern North Carolina long before the Outer Banks themselves existed. Archaeologists believe people were living in this region 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. Yet the indigenous peoples who visited these islands appear to have considered them too harsh and inhospitable for permanent settlement. And it's easy to understand why. The islands were isolated. Water surrounded them. Summer heat was intense. Storms regularly reshaped the landscape. Winds and shifting sand were constant companions. For centuries, simply getting here was an adventure. Before bridges connected the Outer Banks to the mainland, Nags Head was isolated. Visitors arrived by boat. Supplies arrived by boat. Reaching this narrow strip of sand required effort and determination. Yet for those willing to make the journey, there was something special waiting here. Ocean breezes, open space, and a way of life unlike anywhere else. Over time, those who came to Nags Head learned an important lesson. The coast could not be controlled, but it could be understood. And nowhere is that lesson more visible than in the historic Oceanfront Cottages, several of which still stand today. The first year-round residents of the area, the bankers, settled primarily in Nags Head woods, where dense forest offered protection from the wind and weather that battered the oceanfront. Families such as the Tillotts, Balms, and Tollers built their lives away from the beach itself. The oceanfront was another matter entirely. It was hot, wind-blown, covered in sand, and constantly changing.
Those early visitors to Nags Head would visit and stay in a hotel on the sound side. And it was a generation later that having cottages on the beach was an idea, and it was a wild idea. It was just sand. It was hot as blue blazes, but there was a constant breeze.
That breeze changed everything. Long before air conditioning, it offered relief from eastern North Carolina's oppressive summer heat. Families began realizing that life on the oceanfront, while challenging, also offered something unique. The very things that made the beach difficult could also make it desirable. The challenge became figuring out how to build for it.
Toward the end of the 19th century, there were certain of the families that built cottages on the ocean side, and that started the oceanside development of Nags Head.
As more cottages appeared along the oceanfront in the late 1800s and early 1900s, a distinctly Nags Head style emerged. Perhaps no one influenced that style more than beloved Elizabeth City builder Stephen J. Twine. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Twine helped shape what we now recognize as Cottage Row. His homes featured sweeping roof lines, broad porches, lean-out benches, and elevated foundations. Today, these details are admired for their beauty, but they were never intended as decoration. They were solutions.
Mr. Twine was the one who was responsible for the look of the Nags Head Cottage Row with those sweeping roofs and porches and lean-out benches.
The cottages were built for function over form. Wide porches created shade. Deep roof overhangs protected windows from the summer sun. Lean-out benches provided comfortable places to sit where residents could capture every bit of the ocean breeze.
The porches were there to catch the breezes from all around. That was the function of the porches.
There was no air conditioning, so the cottage itself became the cooling system. Windows were positioned to encourage airflow. Rooms were arranged to maximize cross-ventilation. Porches weren't just a place to cool off. They were often the center of family and social life.
My grandfather had 3 daughters, and there wasn't any real social life down here other than the cottages. And that allowed them to have little dances on the porch with a hand crank Victrola.
In the cottage owned by Lloyd's mother's family, the large porch became the center of social life. What began as a practical architectural feature became a place where families gathered, relationships formed, and traditions were passed from one generation to the next. The architecture endured because it worked with nature, not against it. The same philosophy shaped what happened beneath the cottages. Many of the earliest structures sat 3 or 4 feet off the ground, not because builders had detailed scientific models of coastal processes, but because they understood the realities of living here.
There were about 3 or 4 cottages that were built at that time, mainly shacks, because they were just somewhere to live, and that's why you didn't have any subflooring. They were just cottages that sat 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and if they went, they went.
Twine's cottages continued that tradition. Built on pilings, they allowed water to flow beneath them. Wind could pass through and underneath. Sand could move. The landscape could continue doing what barrier islands have always done.
They do migrate. They're migrating westward bit by bit by bit. And that has happened for eons. In the early time when we were at Nags Head as children, the tides continued to wash over the whole island, and then they would draw back.
Builders understood something modern coastal communities continue to wrestle with today. The island moves, the water moves, the sand moves. Successful buildings make room for these natural processes. The historic cottages were not designed to dominate the environment. They were designed to survive within it. Even as Cottage Row grew, Nags Head remained isolated. Phone lines existed, telegraph lines existed, but mostly for life-saving stations. Families vacationing on the beach often had no phone at all.
Even in the early 1960s, there was really one grocery store, and it was about a half-a-mile walk from our cottage. And we didn't have a telephone in the cottage. If we needed to make a phone call, we would go across the street to Kessinger's store. And so it really was isolated, even in the early 1960s.
That isolation helped create a unique sense of community. Neighbors knew one another. Families returned year after year. Generations grew up in the same cottages.
My father's father, my grandfather, built our cottage, the Rasco Cottage, in Nags Head. He started building it in 1931 over that winter, and they used it the first time in the summer of 1932.
For many families, these cottages became something far more important than vacation homes. They became gathering places, memory makers, a thread connecting generations. The historic cottages of Nags Head are more than architectural landmarks. They are evidence of a philosophy built on observation, adaptation, and respect for the environment. Builders like Stephen J. Twine understood that life on a barrier island requires flexibility. The cottages he built did not attempt to conquer the coast. They embraced the breeze. They accommodated the water. They accepted the shifting sand. And because of that, they became perfectly suited to Nags Head. More than a century later, some of those early cottages have disappeared, lost to time, storms, development, and the ever-changing nature of the barrier island itself.
A lot of the cottages that were built before his time, say before the turn of the 20th century, some of those are not there anymore.
Yet despite the challenges of life on Nags Head's oceanfront, a number of these historic cottages have endured.
Either 9 or 10 were left around the turn of this century, and then there have been a couple that have been lost since then. There are some original ones left.
The cottages that remain are more than historic buildings. They are reminders of a time when Nags Head was isolated, when families arrived by boat, when the breeze served as air conditioning and the porches served as living rooms. They are physical examples of a way of building that embraced the realities of life on a barrier island. But for many families, what survives just isn't the architecture. It's something less tangible, a feeling.
And that was what so much of the cottages represented, is a feel.
More than a century later, that feeling remains. In the breeze that still moves across the porches, in the stories passed from one generation to the next, and in the historic cottages that remind us that sometimes the best way to live on the coast is not to fight nature, but to build with it.